Please welcome to the stage our keynote speaker for the evening, Elisa Medina, Executive Director, Anthropoid Tucson.
If that wasn't a picture of the Father's love, I don't know what is. As I have been preparing for this time and praying and asking the Lord, what would you have me talk about, Lord? The word that he keeps bringing to mind over and over and over is invitation. As followers of Jesus, we understand that the Lord is always inviting us into his work. The question is, do we hear his voice? And then if we do we actually listen? I'm so grateful for the invitation that the Lord offered me to receive him as my Lord and Savior as a little girl. I grew up in a very beautiful home with a social dad and a stay-at-home mom who watched all the children in the neighborhood. And I never heard the words pro-life or pro-choice ever once. But I knew that my parents valued life, and they taught me to value life. And I received the Lord as a young child, but I didn't actually let him be the leader for quite some time. And all of my life, as I reflect back, he's always been inviting me into something. You see, it wasn't my idea to move into the Medical Park Plaza near the last abortion clinic in Tucson. It was God's idea. Planted this seed in my heart, and I heard him, and I was crazy enough to say yes. And then I somehow convinced my team to come with me. Invitation. The Lord is so good. In fact, I was laughing in my car. This is how the Lord and I talk. I just am like, Lord, you outdid yourself. Look at this. You outdid yourself. And that's how I felt with the New Pregnancy Center. And, from the time that we received ownership of the space to the day that we got the certificate of occupancy, it was 9 months exactly. 9 months. Now, the Lord does. Hello? They want me to stay put. The Lord does these things for me because I am a freaker-outer, okay? I'm like the Israelites that the Lord delivered from Egypt and then I forget. And he provides manna every day and I forget. And so that 9-month thing was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And along the way, every step of the way, the Lord provided miraculously. And I'll give you a few examples of that. So we had the space, and we needed to make it beautiful because we were not going to have this building in this location without it being beautiful. And I went home one day and I said, Fernando, I need the best. I don't know if we can afford the best, but I need the best. And Fernando said, well, I know a guy. I met him at a men's weekend. Here's his name, why don't you call him? Well, I Googled this man and his work, and I thought, we can never afford him. But God, if that's what you have for us, would you do it? And Mr. Kaler came into that building, and I cried and he cried, so I knew it was going to be a really good thing. Because he accepted an invitation. And I haven't talked to him lately, but I can almost guarantee that he's been blessed for saying yes to the Lord. And then God brought us an architect from Prescott, who, again, I said, Lord, I want the best. And we have to redo this whole space because the building was hideous when we moved in. Old. Wouldn't meet our needs at all. And I said, Lord, bring us someone. And sure enough, the Lord brought this woman all the way from Prescott, and we were walking her through the space. And I said, I've been praying about an architect. And she said, well, that's really interesting because I've been praying that God would use my gifts for something. Boom. Architect. Okay, architect, builder. Awesome. And then my sweet, sweet friend, Monica, with Monica Design. We sat and we talked about every detail of that space and how we wanted this space to be beautiful. Because you know what God wants to do for his kids? He wants to lavish his love on us. And he doesn't care. We're the ones that look at people and think, well, they have it together, they don't have it together. You know what God blesses the most in the biggest mess? And when women come into our pregnancy center, we want them to know that the God of the universe sees them. And so Monica designed that space, and it was more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. But then there was a problem. We were out of money, because the Lord also likes to do that with me. Here's a breadcrumb, follow. Here's a breadcrumb, follow. And we were getting ready to open the pregnancy center after Christmas. We knew it was January, February, and I was off. I was at the park at Udall with my kids off, praying about this predicament. God, you've created such a beautiful space, but we don't have furniture. And my very wise assistant and friend called me while I was walking with my kids, and she said, hey, there's a guy who just called, and he's looking to give an ultrasound machine to us. And I said, well, we don't need an ultrasound machine. And she's like, yeah, but he wants to give you an ultrasound machine, so I think you should call him. So I was like, okay. So I called this man at the park with my kids, and he says, you know, my wife and I really have a heart for unborn children. And we're having a hard time finding a pregnancy center that needs an ultrasound machine. And I said, yeah, that's kind of the technology we all have now, and so we don't need that, but can I tell you a story? And I shared with this stranger at the time that the Lord had provided a space and that we needed furniture. And he said, well, how much furniture? I said, well, a lot of furniture. And he said, I think we can do that. And I remember hanging up the phone. And I called the office and I said, so I just talked to a man I've never met before. And I think some money might be coming, but I'm not sure if it was actually a true thing or not. So let me know if that comes through. They accepted an invitation, and I'm so grateful. That's what the Lord does when we say yes to his invitations. And I'm sure there are so many other people in this room that I could personally think and share stories about. But now I want to tell you a different story about an invitation that I had in 1999. I was staring at two pink ones. And I'll tell you what, I don't know why a woman is ever surprised, because we know how babies get here. But when you are staring at two pink lines and you were not planning that, it was like the world stood still. And in that moment, the Lord was inviting me into an assignment called motherhood. Now, I'd like to tell you that I thought, you know what, I can do this, but that's not what I thought. You see, I had been living such a risky lifestyle when I found those two lines. My mom had passed away when I was in 8th grade. The year after she passed away, I was sexually assaulted, and the enemy came in like a flood. And I believed things about me that God never intended for me to believe. And I lived out of that belief, that I wasn't valuable, that I wasn't precious, that I wasn't worth anything. And when people are broken, they do anything they can to numb the pain. And that's what I had been doing for about 5 years. So when I saw those 2 pink lines, I walked into an abortion clinic. Now remember, I grew up in a home where my parents valued life. And I wasn't one of those women that thought this isn't a baby. I knew it was a child. I remember thinking, if I choose abortion, I will be ending another human life. But the enemy said things to me like, who do you think you are? You can't be a parent. You can barely take care of yourself. What if you harm this child because of the drugs and the alcohol? But the Lord brought 2 people into that invitation with me. One was my pastor, who had the courage to talk about abortion on a Sunday morning in a service. And the second was my father, who happened to be sitting in that church service the day that I called him and said, Dad, I have a decision to make. And my dad said, Elisa, do not have an abortion. I will walk with you through this pregnancy, even if no one else does. And my dad did just that. And I accepted the assignment of motherhood. Was I afraid? Yes. Did I know what I was doing? No. I had no clue what I was doing. But the Lord provided. And he showed me how to nurture, and he showed me how to love that little boy. And that little boy was what brought me back to Jesus. That little boy was a gift from God to me in a time that I did not deserve a gift. So I've always understood, or at least can identify with women walking into our pregnancy center. And that's why when the Lord called us into darkness, literally, when he called us into the medical park plaza, which when we walked in there for the first several times, you could just feel the dark presence in that space. And again, when the Lord calls you into something like that, the enemy is right there because he wants to snatch that seed, and he does not want you to receive that invitation. So much so that one day I was getting ready for work, and I was just talking to the Lord, praying through some things, and I heard a voice in my head that said the same thing from back in 1999. Who do you think you are? And then the voice said, who do you think you are to come into my territory? And I recognized that voice as the enemy of my soul, and I was afraid. I was like, who do I think I am? Like, this is scary stuff. And the Holy Spirit just as fast said, I'll tell you who you are. You are a daughter of the one true God who sent his son Jesus to die on the cross and to raise from the dead. And that Jesus lives in you. So you tell Satan who you are. And so I stood in front of my mirror and I said those things out loud. I said, God has given me this assignment. God has given our team this assignment, and we are going to follow Jesus into the darkest place in our city, where a man takes life every single day. And you know what our weapon's going to be? Praise and worship and prayer. And church, that is what disarms the evil one. And God was so good that the very first day that we were open to clients, I got there first. I got there early, and I got out of my car, and there was a rainbow over the entire plaza. And God was saying, Elisa, I am with you. I've gone before you, and I will be with you every step of the way. And the very first client that we saw was a woman who had gone to Planned Parenthood. And she came to Hands of Hope, and she told us that she was undecided. And there's ways that we identify clients by what they tell us. We have women who come in abortion-minded. They are decided that they're coming into Hands of Hope, but they're telling us that they're going to have an abortion. Then we have women who are abortion vulnerable. They come into Hands of Hope, and even though they might want to carry, they have a boyfriend or a parent or someone of influence in their life telling them to have an abortion. But this woman was sincerely undecided. So when she walked into Planned Parenthood, she said, I don't know what I want to do. I need someone to talk to. And the person she spoke with said, we don't do that here. We don't have time to talk to you. And I thank God for that person. Because when she came to the ends of hope, we gave her the gift of time. And we sat with her, and we loved her, and we invited her to see her baby on ultrasound, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Again, I wish that I could say that it's been an easy journey. Just like Cindy mentioned earlier, we knew that we would experience severe warfare. And when you follow God's invitation, you experience that. I got a phone call from a friend of ours who a lot of you know in this room. His name is Matt Merrill. Matt is the kind of guy that when God puts a person on his heart, he will call them, and he will leave a voicemail, and it'll sound like this. Hi, Lisa, this is Matt Merrill. You don't need to call me back. But God put you on my heart, and so I want to pray for you. And I'm just really sensing that because of your moving into this building, that you're going to have extreme spiritual warfare in your home and at the ministry, but I'm praying for you. And the only way I can explain how this came to my home was after that space was open and we were serving clients, I went into what I can describe as almost postpartum depression. And I had never experienced anything like that before. I had never struggled with depression. But I wanted to stay in my bed and put the covers over my head and not get out. And I knew what was going on. I knew that this was an attack. And so I worshiped. My husband faithfully prayed for me, and I had a team of intercessors who I met with who prayed for me regularly, and they are who prayed me through that season, I'm convinced. And as soon as that lifted, the Lord invited me into something that I never would have imagined. I've had the opportunity to counsel hundreds of women in my 15 years at Hands of Hope, some of them your children. And I remember a particular young man who was friends with my son Tyler. And he and his girlfriend were in high school, and they found out they were pregnant. And I sat with this couple, and they were a couple, this young man, his parents served in ministry, and I just remember leaving that place thinking, wow, a decision like that can change your life. Something like this could happen in a moment. And I'm not a naive person. In fact, I sit on a cohort with about 20 other pro-life ministry leaders from around the country, and I've heard their stories about their challenges in their family with their children. But something about this particular client, I think because he reminded me so much of my son Tyler, I just really felt like I needed to go home and say to our son, I know you've grown up in this. I know you've heard mom and dad talk about unplanned pregnancy and abortion your whole life. But that night I felt like I needed to tell him, you know how Daddy and I feel. You know our heart for you. You know God's plans for you. But I need you to hear that if you ever find yourself in an unplanned pregnancy, that we are safe people for you to talk to. And then we had a big bowl of Rocky Road ice cream. Because I just wanted to be a mom with my 16-year-old son at that time. Well, that 16-year-old got a little bit older. And on an evening in March, Fernando and I were in the kitchen, and he was sitting at the counter, and we were having robust dialogue. I don't know what we were arguing about, but we were arguing about something, and he just said, Mom, my girlfriend and I are pregnant. And it was as if Jesus himself stood in that kitchen with us. And a peace that I can't understand came over me. And the Holy Spirit said, Elisa, I'm inviting you to respond. You get one shot at this. And I walked around the corner. I held my little boy, now a young adult. And I said, I love you. And Fernando, who's much more spiritual than me, was like, congratulations, son, you're going to be a father. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm not even 40 years old. It was such a moment, such an invitation. And then the next day, Tyler brought his girlfriend to our house, who's come to our house so many times. I mean, we love this young lady, and she had been at our home for dinner and for holidays. But that day she walked into our house, and she knew that we knew. And she wouldn't look me in the eye. And again, I felt the Lord say, Elisa, I want you to be me to her right now. I'm inviting you to be me with skin on. I walked over to her and I said, Kira, I love you. And you are not going to have your head held down. And we are going to walk with you every step of the way. And I said, I don't want to be the executive director of Hands of Hope. I want to be your mom. So what do you want to do? Where do you want to go next? And Tyler looked at me without any hesitation, and he said, Mom, we are going to Hands of Hope. I don't know what it's like to have the courage that these two young people have. Because I would have been so ashamed. I would have ran the other way. And I had dinner with them the other night, and of course I have permission to share all of this with you. I said, why? Why did you choose to come to Hands of Hope? And Kira said, it was the only place I knew that would love and accept and support us. For years, I've been saying this to the church. For years, I've been saying, will we be grace when our kids need grace? Will we be love when our kids need love? And here we were, I was like, Lord, I was already really committed to this. Like, super committed to this. But the crazy thing is, they've been hearing me talk about this for years, but they believed me. They believed me that you would be who I told them you would be. And they invited me into every part of that appointment. And I sat in that waiting room that I designed for everyone else's kids. And I thought about the paint colors. I thought about the tile. I thought about the artwork. And God said, Lisa, that was all for you. And we walked to an ultrasound room. And this is what we heard. We heard life. Tyler, I am so proud to be your mom. Daddy and I are so proud of you. And Kira, you are a gift from God to my family. And I love you. God has a funny sense of humor, because last year we sent out a survey to all of you, and we asked you, do you think we should have a keynote speaker? And you said no. So I said, well, I guess I'll have to speak, but I don't really have anything dramatic to share. about the invitation of Grandma. We have a little boy that I prayed and prayed and prayed would not come tonight. His name is Amari J. His name means strength, and he will be with us in about 3 weeks. You all have been the church, Jesus in the flesh, to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients, and now to my family too. And as I talk about giving tonight, there are some people that say, give the price of a life. Tell people how much it'll cost to save a life. But I just can't, because there's no value on a human being. The very first adult that Kara and Tyler told said, "You're too young, I'll pay for the abortion." I've heard that said many, many times, but no one has ever offered to end the life of my grandchild. And it's my heart that every grandchild has an opportunity to live. And I want to wrap up with some context here. I was having dinner with some dear friends of ours, some of our best friends, Chris and Dana Allbrand. And Chris is a Chief Master Sergeant for the U.S. Air Force. And Chris, I want to honor you tonight if you would stand. And as you symbolize all of our service members, is like Special Forces elite pararescue guy, okay? And so we were talking one night and I said, "Chris, how many people have you saved? How many lives have you saved?" And like most servicemen and women, they don't really know, okay? But I said, like in your career, he's been doing this for 22 years, he's been jumping out of planes, he's been rescuing people. And he told me, I don't know, like 150 to 200 people. And he said, and we're like the last team to go in. There are other teams that go in before us. We're the last resort. Like, if we don't come, they're not going to make it out. I said, wow, that's a lot of people. How much did that cost? And he's like, I don't know, like $4 to $5 million. I was like, huh. Not one of us would ever say, why would we spend so much money to go and rescue our fellow Americans? Never once. And then I showed off for my team a little, and I said, well, we've saved like over 230 for $300,000. And here's the thing. We also have experts. We have trained men and women who are waiting, and they are the last resort for these babies. They are it. They are the last resort for these moms and dads and families. And the only reason why we were able to save so many babies for that amount of money was because they give us their time. They give us their expertise. $300,000 is about 1/4 of our annual budget. And I would pay that for one. So I'm going to ask you to pray. I'm going to ask you to ask the Lord, how would He have you respond to His invitation tonight? And as you do that, we're going to play one more video. And if the table sponsors can pass out envelopes and pens to all of you as you're thinking. God, you're so faithful. You're pretty funny. You have a great sense of humor. And Lord, I thank you for the invitation to follow you. I thank you, Lord, that you have brought together a team of people who are bringing life into a place of darkness. And God, I pray that you would speak to every heart here and invite them to do what you would have them do. And I pray that they would respond. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
As someone who has received 3 services in Hands of Hope, I just want to say thank you to the donors. Without you guys, this wouldn't happen. These miracles and changes and God's words, God's Holy Spirit wouldn't be available for these women.
Without donors, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and the kids that we go to the schools to wouldn't have heard the truth that we say, and it's just a really important message that we bring. Without the donors, it really wouldn't exist. It's really important. I feel emotional just because they're so important, and people think we're the boots on the ground, so we're doing the things, but we wouldn't even have boots if it wasn't for people giving their time and their money and their prayers.
When you choose to give financially to Hands of Hope, you're not just supporting an organization or a charity. You are investing in God's work within our community here in Tucson, and you are not only saving lives, but you're helping to restore women like me who felt that there maybe was no hope for their situation, or felt that they were going to live under the burden of their sin for their entire lives. And I can't even explain how much Hands of Hope has meant to me personally, and the work that they are doing has completely changed my life. So I do thank people like you who do choose to give to Hands of Hope.
Jeff Logsdon, Senior Pastor of Hope City Church and Hands of Hope Vice Chair.
When we began the night, you heard that it was going to be a night of celebration. And it's been a night of worship. It's been a night of praise. And we're going to continue with that theme of worship and praise in our prayers. And so would you join me in thanking City Psalms for the worship tonight? And we want to thank each of you as well, in addition to the donors and the table sponsors. Each person who is here tonight, I know that you are invested, not just in Hands of Hope, but God's mission for our city. And so we're grateful for each of you. As we wrap up, I want to let you know that if you have completed those cards and there's a donation that you want to leave, you can either place that in the envelope on the table, or on your way out there's baskets that you can place those in. And if you are committing to be a monthly donor for the first time tonight, or you're increasing your monthly donation, we have a gift for you. There is a copy of the DVD Unplanned that you can pick up in the foyer on your way out. You heard Elisa mention that the word invitation as the word that God had spoke to her. And as I was listening to her, the phrase invitation leads to adventure is what came to mind. And I'm grateful for the invitation that's been extended to each of you. As someone who came to our city, Tucson, from Southern California, I remember Elisa coming to me and extending the invitation to be part of the board. And I said, Elisa, I don't need another thing to do. And she lowered the bar really low. She said, it's a quarterly commitment. And I said, I can't say no to you and Fernando. I'm in. And I will tell you, the worship, the praise, the prayer that we experienced tonight is a part of everything that we get to be a part of. And I absolutely look forward to being a part of what we get to do together. And as I share that with you, we talked about restoration this evening. And as we talked about restoration, there was a moment last year when we were hosting the Deeper Still retreat, and Elisa extended the invitation to be part of that retreat. And I showed up, kind of dense, being the guide that I am, and I was at that retreat, sitting there in the seats, surrounded by women, as you can imagine, and I said, I'm here as a board member. They said, no, you're not. I said, I must be here as a pastor then. I said, no, you're not. And it was in that moment that I realized that I was there as a participant. And I had to take off the pastor hat and take off the board member hat and yield to the invitation and the work that God wanted to do in my heart. I won't get into all those details, but when I was 18 years old, my girlfriend at the time was pregnant. And she said she was going to have an abortion because she was also a model. And she didn't want to ruin her body. And I didn't say anything. I dropped her off at the curb and I picked her up. And I still have the vivid memories of what our child looked like when it passed in the toilet. And I thought I had dealt with it. I thought I had dealt with it in my confession to the Lord when I was turning in my application for Bible college. I thought I had dealt with it when I had the opportunity to hear the story of Tilly through Focus on the Family on the radio there in Southern California. But I will tell you that I'm grateful for the invitation to be a part of Deeper Still and to take off the hats that I wore that day and to set aside the ego and the pride and to listen to the invitation for God to take me deeper still. And as I heard the stories of the women around that room talk about the healing that they were experiencing, I remember hearing a few women say, God revealed the name of my child to me. And that was never a thought that I could have imagined. And I remember asking the question, Lord, what's the name of my child? And I will tell you, I assigned a name, wanting desperately to have a name. And then shortly after Deeper Still Retreat, after the healing, it continued. It still continues. I remember being in a silence retreat with a group of pastors, and the question emerged once again, Lord, do you have a name, your name, for my child? And it was the invitation to Deeper Still that was continued in that silence retreat, where the Lord gave me the name of that child. And I will tell you, it was a name I didn't like. I said, I don't really care for that name, there's got to be a better one. And he said, what was the name, the middle name of your child's mom? And then through the course of that time together, through worship and prayer and praise, he affirmed that name. And so God has continued to wash over me as we get to share that movie unplanned with you tonight for those that make first-time donations and increase your monthly donation. I got another invitation through Hands of Hope to go and watch a preview of Unplanned. And I wept. And I wept. And I wept not because of the guilt, but because as I watched Abby Johnson tell her story of the thousands of lives that she was responsible for, the one whose life I was responsible for was the equivalent of those thousands. And I heard God saying, there's more I have in store for you. I have a greater invitation for you. And so I share those things with you tonight, not to shame or guilt you or even for you to feel sorry for me, but because each of us has an invitation. And it's not just what's in those envelopes on your table. We every day have the opportunity to instill courage and hope in the lives of the people that God brings to our paths in this city and beyond. And so I hope that as you leave here, you will hear that invitation and that you will accept it. Jeremiah 33:3 says, if you call upon the name of the Lord, there are hidden things that I wish to tell you. Hidden things like the assignment he might have for you as you leave here. Hidden things like maybe the name of your unborn child. Hidden things like the secrets that we push down that he wants to bring to the forefront for us to experience healing. Would you pray with me? God, I thank you for the picture of Elisa as the person that you have handed the mantle to for this organization. I thank you for the picture of her getting there first at the office that morning, and the picture of the rainbow, and the invitation to carry out your assignment on behalf of each of us for Hands of Hope. And Lord, I thank you for the team that surrounds her and the courage that they have in the midst of each and every day, and the lives that are being saved even now. And Lord, you have that same invitation for each one of us. And so I pray that as we sit here, we would listen and we would respond. Lord, that the echoes of that Jeremiah 33:3, that we would call upon your name, and that you would reveal to us the things that you would have in store for us, the ways that we would respond, the ways that we would bring courage and life and hope and meaning to the people that you place in front of us each and every day. That we would take heart and speak up about those secrets that we have suppressed and open our hearts to the restoration that you have in store for each one of us. Lord, I believe that you are assembling your army. You have assembled your army, and you are seeing that carried out each and every day exponentially. And so we say, here we are. Send us. Use us, Lord. However you see fit for your glory. We give you the praise in Jesus' name. Amen. If throughout the course of the night, as you have heard some of these stories that have been shared from the people up here, have touched you, where you need prayer, either for yourself or for someone else, this part of tonight we want you to know is come to an end, and you're welcome to go. But City Songs is going to play a few more songs. And so you're invited to worship in your seats, to pray and to praise. And if you would like to receive prayer, there will be a prayer team over here on my left, your right, and we would love to pray for you and the invitation that God is asking you to receive. Thank you for your time this evening, and we're grateful for you. Praise God.